Well, two of the main characters in this movie are named Paul and David. Now, I thought that was going to lead up to some sort of biblical reference. However, the other main characters in this movie are named Eddie, Otis, and Melvin. Now, not quite the Bible, but we are dealing with a reference that's probably just as sacred, the Temptations. That's what the world is today! So the newest Spike Lee film is called The Five Bloods. It follows a group of 4 black Vietnam veterans who go back to their old battlegrounds to retrieve the remains of their fallen squad leader while also searching for the secret stash of gold that they buried there many years ago. The film goes back and forth between the present day adventure and flashbacks where we see the Bloods interacting and fighting alongside their fallen squad leader played by Chadwick Boseman. Now I really want to get my gripes about this movie out of the way first because I don't have many to begin with. Most of them deal with the flashback sequences. Every now and then, the film seems to cut back to these flashback scenes at really inconvenient times. Which really sucks because this movie actually had a lot of suspenseful and tense scenes, and these cutaways could really mess up all the tension that the movie was building up. On top of that, the main characters in the flashback sequences are played by the exact same actors as in their present-day counterparts. For my personal taste, it just seemed kind of weird to see these 60-year-old, 70-year-old guys shooting alongside Chadwick Boseman. Now, that's not to say they don't kick ass later on in the movie. I'm just saying it's a little bit weird because you could have had younger actors playing them in the flashback sequences. All in all, that's really just a nitpick, so just be ready for that when you're going into this movie. Now let's get to the good stuff. Now I'm really bummed that I didn't get to see this movie in theaters because this movie honestly has some really good cinematography. Instead, I saw it at my grandma's house. Love you, Momo. While the main story is shot in impeccable quality, the flashback sequences are shot in gritty 16mm footage that you would normally see in a Vietnam War documentary, which I thought was a nice touch. Also, I really dug how well the music was used in this film. We're so used to seeing Vietnam War movies being paired up with songs from artists like the Rolling Stones or CCR, but this movie uses really great soul music from the 60s and 70s. Now, most of the songs featured in this movie are by Marvin Gaye, and while they're not the most action-packed, thrilling songs, they're paired up with action-packed, thrilling scenes, and in my opinion, Spike Lee really made it work. But do you know what song should have been featured in this movie? Ball of Confusion. I also want to touch on how well the main cast interacted with each other. From that very first scene, you really believe that these guys have known each other for decades. And even after all these years, they're still joking around and picking on each other. They can actually be pretty dang funny, and it is really enjoyable to see them all together. And yes, while they do have this very strong bond, this very strong kinship, Spike Lee decided to give them their own outlooks on life in order to open up the floodgates for the many narratives that this movie has to offer. It's like someone went up to Spike Lee and asked him, "Okay, Spike, so we got a racial injustice, the mistreatment of our veterans, our current political climate, the atrocities of war committed by the US, and even the opioid epidemic that we can talk about. So which one are you gonna choose?" Yes, literally all of these topics are referenced in the film. While some are only briefly mentioned, others are shown through historical pictures and in some cases, very graphic documentary footage. Now some of this is incredibly unpleasant to watch, but I feel like that was the whole point because it makes the message that much more powerful. Out of the main themes that I previously mentioned, the one that the film predominantly shows is the mistreatment of our black Vietnam veterans. Now the traumas of the war are shown in every main character, but there is one particular person who it hits the hardest. Now if there is one person who completely stands out from this film, it is this man right here, Delroy Lindo. Oh my God. Now I'm not saying everyone else in the movie is bad, they're all great, but Delroy Lindo as Paul steals the entire show. His character has been beaten down, both mentally and emotionally, and you can see it in every single mannerism of Delroy Lindo's performance. You can tell that this guy is just always anxious, and on top of that, he has this very haunting 1,000-yard stare in literally every scene that he's in. The anger that builds up inside of this human being is so much that it leaves him in tears in literally numerous points throughout the whole movie. It is so painful and tragic to watch that in one scene in particular, I forgot that I was watching a movie. In the end, it is probably one of, if not the best movie that I have seen throughout this entire quarantine. It's thought-provoking and action-packed, and despite the dark material, it still manages to be funny sometimes. Now it's currently streaming on Netflix, but if it gets re-released in theaters, you know that I'll be one of the first people in line to see it again on the big screen. I'm giving it an 8.3 out of 10. Now to everybody watching, I just want to say thanks again for tuning in and for showing your support for my channel after I released my first review last week. If you want to critique my critique, or if you have something to suggest, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed my review, leave a like and subscribe to my channel. There's plenty more on the way.